Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at the IMT, the Institute of Military Technology, taking a look at a truly forgotten weapon. This is a FARC-3, that is a FARC-2. FARC is the Future Assault Rifle Concept. This is a program put together by none other than Eugene Stoner in the early 1970s as a concept rifle platform for military forces. So a little bit of timeline here. Eugene Stoner, of course, began his professional small arms development work with the Armalite company, developed the AR-10 and many other projects. From there, he moved on to, did some work with Colt, moved on to Cadillac Gage, did some work with TRW. Eventually, in 1971, he founds, or co-founds with some partners, the F.A.R.C company. And they did a whole bunch of military development work across all sorts of different weapons systems, of which individual small arms were only one component. They start developing this in 1971, and they go through 3 iterations, the FARC-1, 2, and 3. Now, the FARC-1 was just a conceptual drawing, never actually a physical gun built. The FARC-2 was this gun. They only made one of them. They made a few revisions to that design. Mechanically, fundamentally, it's the same, but a few changes to how it disassembles, how the pieces interact together. And that becomes the FARC-3, which they made 2 of. Not to confuse too many small numbers here, but this is a FARC-3. So let's go ahead and take a look at both of these, because there's some really neat stuff going on in this rifle, and I bet you've never seen it before. Start with some markings here. This is the FARC-2, which is the first gun actually made. Like I said, the FARC-1 was just a drawing. So made by F.A.R.C Inc., FARC-2, caliber is .556. These use standard .556 NATO ammunition, serial number 1. Specifically, they use Stoner 63 magazines, although this magazine I can't get to actually lock. It doesn't lock into the FARC-2. I think one of the things that they improved when they went to the FARC-3, which would be this guy here, F.A.R.C Inc. FARC-3, serial number 1, this one does in fact use a Stoner 63 mag. Locks in just like that. So there's your magazine release. This is a manual bolt hold open. Here is one of the other funky features of the gun. It has a pivoting dust cover here that encompasses basically the entire top of the receiver cover. So when you fire, that pops open. Go ahead and engage the automatic bolt hold open there. Interestingly, the ejection port on this gun is this space right in here. It has to kick the round out between the recoil spring guide rod, the spring's compressed up here inside the gas tube, and the edge of the receiver. So kind of interesting. Like, this would be a little tricky to get design-wise working, to not have cases bounce off of various obstructions there. A few other controls here. We have a safety flag in the front of the trigger guard, actually rather FAMAS-like. In the center, it is on safe. Pushed over to the left is semi-auto, and pushed over to the right is fully automatic. Classic concept here that's been used a bunch of times. The handguard is also a bipod. Now in this case, this actually works as a much more effective handguard than most of these dual-purpose handguard bipods. Like, that's actually nice and solid, pretty good. The gas tube is up here, but it's under this perforated heat shield, so this will get warm, but shouldn't get hot enough to actually burn you. And then you can just pull the bipod legs down, like so. Got a bit of a heat shield here for the barrel as well, so if you have to grab this with the bipod down, you at least have a heat shield. Like, the heat shield's gonna get hot too, but it's better than accidentally grabbing the barrel. And there's no solid lock on these. You pull them back, and they've just got spring detents before they fold. There are no iron sights on the rifle. This is a sling swivel. It's just missing the actual sling swivel. These are designed to be used with optics. I have no idea who exactly made this, but it's marked Precision Reflex Sight, New Bremen, Ohio, RSR 304, and on the top, caution radioactive material, which isn't concerning at all. Yeah, serial number 1. And then we've got zeroing windage and elevation knobs right there. This is actually a pretty cool optic. Let's see if we can get you a view through it. All right, I can't get my main camera in here, but I can get it through the iPhone. So that's what you're seeing right there. This has a very distinct reddish purple tone to it. And the aiming point is a green, like a green inverted cross, inverted plus. There we go. What's interesting is if you're shooting this, if you're looking at it, if you have one eye closed, you get this purple hue to everything. But if you actually go in with both eyes open, your brain sort of deletes the purple and you actually get that green aiming point without much discoloration of the background, which is kind of interesting and cool. This is, by the way, this is showing up a lot brighter here than I find it works in ambient light. I think this was originally some sort of radioactive element powered, and it's not that bright. So there you go. It's a really interesting optic. I'd love to know more about the history of it. Next up, moving out to the muzzle end, we've got this gigantic assembly. Now, this is a Eugene Stoner gun, and so it shouldn't be that surprising that he took this concept that he originally put on the early AR-10s and made use of it again. This is not a suppressor, contrary to how it looks. This is actually a muzzle brake. And very conveniently, I've taken the barrel from our other FARC-3, and I can actually demonstrate exactly how this works. There would normally be a spring detent here locking this muzzle nut in place, but the detent is missing on this one, so I can just unscrew it very easily. This is your muzzle brake, essentially, the actual muzzle device. It's a 3-port brake right there, and with that off, I can take this tube off, and you can see there are no holes in the barrel. This is a solid barrel, and when it's assembled, it looks like that with this tube sitting over it right there. So what happens is gas comes out the muzzle, and you get a bit of a gas trap effect because the end of this is a little smaller than the whole end of the thing. And so gas actually flows backward over this area of the barrel, vents out these little dinky holes, and that redirected gas reduces the recoil, acts as a muzzle brake. I don't think this would actually act as a suppressor. If it did, it would be to some really tiny degree, but very cool. And like I said, this is exactly the same concept as what's on the early AR-10s. When you see pictures of those things are not suppressors, they are this. We're going to move on to disassembly here, and I'm going to use the FARC-3 because the mechanical principles in both versions of the gun are the same, and this one's a little easier to work with. So I have a spring detent back here. I push that down, rotate the buttstock 90 degrees, and then I can pull the bolt assembly out. Now, the recoil spring is up here on the outside of the gas piston, and so I have to disconnect it from the gun, which is quite easy. We have this lever right there. If I push that lever, I can then pull this whole thing back. Normally, when this piece is locked into the receiver there, then when the bolt travels back, it compresses the spring. So to disassemble it, we unlock it. I can then pull the whole bolt assembly out the back of the receiver until, of course, the bolt handle hits here. And this is actually designed so I can pull the bolt handle out and fold it forward, and then it'll slide out through the receiver there. And voila, there's the bolt and bolt carrier assembly. We can do a little further disassembly with this lug here. This is the lock that holds the barrel in place. So if I pull this down, there we go, we can pull, there we are, out the whole barrel assembly. That hole right there is what this is a plunger pin that locks into that hole to keep the barrel in place. These two slots are actually the cam tracks for the bolt lugs. And I can then slide off the bipod assembly, and there's my barrel assembly. There's the gas port. These guns have been shot quite a lot. Up on top, we've got our gas tube. I've got the upper handguard and its sling swivel. That can come off. In theory, we could then unscrew the gas tube, but we don't need to do that. This is all aluminum, so the frame of the rifle at this point is really quite light. You can can see the rails back here that the bolt carrier runs in. All right, now speaking of the bolt carrier assembly, we have a 2-lug rotating bolt down here. This is in the in-battery position. And if I pop this over, there we go, we can rotate it out, pull off the bolt, pull out the striker mechanism. This is, by the way, striker fired. So this is the sear, and conveniently, you can actually see the sear, the other end of it, down in there. So when I pull the trigger, that sear drops. It would be holding this back, and when the sear drops, this goes snapping forward and fires the gun. A very AK-like cam lug right there. 2 locking lugs, and that's kind of it. Extractor, plunger, ejector on it. And then, okay, we've got one last element here. This is a gigantic, very heavy buffer spring. And I can, there we go. I can compress it a bit, like so. This is a bit of a mystery. So I did take one of these apart. I'll show you that footage here. So you can see the spring inside this is really hefty. All right, I am not going to show you the actual disassembly process of this because it may have been explosive and involve pieces going across the room. There is a very large spring inside this buffer tube. So this guy sits on there, and this spring gets compressed up inside there. Like I said, it's very tight. But what's worth pointing out under here is we have this ratcheting tooth that interacts with these 5 teeth right here. So I can leave the spring out and show this to you. When this is the fully extended position of the buffer. We've got the little locking pin that will hold it right there, prevents it from coming back. And then as this goes forward and compresses, it's actually held in place by that little ratchet tooth. The pin falls out if there's no pressure on it. So this can compress all the way down to there. There's a little notch right here that interacts with the little tooth inside here that's locking the buffer in place. And when I put the bolt in, there we go, it pops that buffer back out with a lot of force. So I think that this is intended to be both an anti-bounce device and a recoil buffer that will compress and absorb energy at the end of travel. I can't really prove it, but I'm reasonably confident in that right now. So there is the Stoner Ares FARC-3 all disassembled. Now let's go take a quick look at the differences in the earlier FARC-2. So as you recall, the FARC-3 pivots open at the buttstock like this. The FARC-2 used a very FAL-like system where we have this pair of latches here. I pull those back and I can pivot down the back end of the gun. And in fact, you can see right there, it's got a locking catch just like an FNFAL. And because it's opened up the entire back end, I don't need to have a folding charging handle on it, so I can unhook, unlatch the recoil system like that as normal, and then I can just pull all the guts out the back again without having to have a folding charging handle. So the FARC-2 has a solid fixed charging handle right there. The parts are not interchangeable. There's a little bit of a difference in style of the spring attachment. So the 3 has this longer, a little more complicated piece here. The 2 just had a big round nut basically right there that the system locks into. But you can see that mechanically, these really are the exact same system. Other than that, the differences are pretty much just aesthetic, detail-oriented. The contours of the receivers are a little bit different. The FARC-3 has a squared-off barrel removal plunger. The FARC-2 has a round one. Everything else is really pretty minor. I think they probably realized that this disassembly method wasn't ideal. Like it's It's easier to get the bolt out, perhaps. It allows you to have a fixed charging handle, but this will wear kind of like they found they wore on the FALs. And so they decided that the sort of pivoting back end of the receiver was better. This also allows you to have a stronger receiver because it's solid back here. This whole section of the receiver is solid, where on the FARC-3, the receiver is open all the way back. In 1973, the Vietnam War is over, and the funding for projects like this pretty much just goes away. Who's going to speculate on investing in a new small arms project for the Army when the Army is just getting out of war? We saw this happen at the end of World War II. A lot of developmental projects just died on the vine. Same thing here. Now, fortunately for Ares, this was just one little small part of their business model, their business plan, what they were working on. So only 3 of the FARC rifles were ever built. After 1973, there are no more. The company just shifts its focus back to other projects that are still of potential commercial value. Things like they had a lot of 35mm armaments work, they were doing tanks, they were doing boats, they were doing all sorts of other stuff, and they just shifted focus to that. So the failure, the dissolution of the FARC, the future assault rifle concept, didn't really cause any long-term damage to Ares as a company. Stoner would stay with the company for another like 15 years. He didn't leave until, I believe, 1989 to pursue yet other projects. Anyway, this has been a fantastic opportunity to get my hands on a couple of truly forgotten weapons that I don't think have really been shown in detail like this anywhere else before. So I'd like to give a really big thanks to the IMT, the Institute of Military Technology, for giving me access to these guns to show to you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.